Welcome, everyone. This is Mary Vandenplas, Director of Operations and Research here at Burtch Works. Today, two of our recruiters, Kit Nordmark and Karla Ahern, will share the results of our 2019 Marketing Research and Consumer Insights Salary Study. Both Kit and Karla began their careers in marketing research as researchers before moving into recruiting. Karla Ahern began her career working on-site at PepsiCo as a project manager for IRI before moving to Knowledge Networks, which was GfK and now owned by Ipsos, where she focused on custom research initiatives in media, CPG, and pharmaceuticals. Prior to Burtch Works, she led business development and digital media effectiveness programs for Dime Store Media, also part of the GfK acquisition and later Ipsos. Kit Nordmark worked in the marketing research industry with a focus in qualitative research. She worked at True, a boutique insights firm specializing in youth, and most recently at the Futures Company, which is now operating as Kantar. So without further ado, over to you, Karla and Kit.
Thanks, Mary. Good morning, or good afternoon for those of you joining us from the East Coast. This is Kit kicking us off today. It's a beautiful, crisp fall day here in Chicago. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm sure many of you have attended one of our webinars before or spoken with a recruiter here at Burtch Works. But for those of you who may be less familiar with us and the work we do, yep, we're a niche recruiting firm and have a team dedicated to helping research and insights professionals find their next roles. And we also work closely with organizations across the U.S. to help find great talent for their research teams. But beyond making connections between research professionals and companies looking to hire, we also really pride ourselves in keeping an eye on the industry as a whole and taking note of the changes and shifts we see along the way. As Mary mentioned, Karla and I both have backgrounds as researchers ourselves, so we're especially tuned into the market since we have that ground floor experience. We speak with marketing research and insights professionals day in and day out, so we like to keep a pulse on the different trends and industry intel to hopefully serve as a great resource for professionals like you in the field. Okay, let's dig into what we're going to cover. This marks our 7th annual Marketing Research Salary Study. Lucky number 7. We'll be sharing the results with you today. This year, we analyzed the data of over 850 researchers working across the U.S. We looked at base salaries across the industry, and we sliced the data by job category or level of experience. We segment supplier-side versus client-side researchers, and we cover industry, region, gender, education, and more. Today we'll go over a handful of topics. First, we'll take a look at how we identify marketing researchers. Then we'll cover demographics. We'll talk about median salaries we saw this year and how things may have changed since last year. We'll also share a couple interesting findings from our supplemental research. We'll close with final trends and implications we've been seeing in the marketing research world lately. And then hopefully we'll have a few extra minutes for a Q&A at the end. That's a quick look at what we'll be covering today. Now I'll hand it over to Karla to get us started.
Thanks, Kit. So, hi everyone, this is Karla. Before we take you through the data, we think it's important to make sure we outline exactly who we're talking about when we say marketing researchers. And you'll also hear us say insights professionals, which is a fairly synonymous term, so we'll use them interchangeably. Marketing researchers work in a number of different areas: quant or qual, secondary or syndicated, and primary custom research. It includes professionals within consumer or shopper insights, category management, media and audience research, and competitive and market intelligence. At Burtch Works, we differentiate marketing researchers from predictive analytics professionals and data scientists. Both of these groups have different skill sets and are covered in a separate study that we publish every year. These are professionals who are typically hands-on with tools such as Python, R, SAS, SQL, and the way we define data scientists, and there's still not really a universal definition, but it's professionals working with massive unstructured data sets, and many of these professionals have PhDs in computer science. We also do not include web analytics professionals, and we keep marketing and brand managers out of our studies as well, since they are likely using insights, but they're a little further removed from how these insights and data are curated. And we have colleagues here at Burtch Works who cover predictive analytics, data science, and web analytics recruiting. But again, we separate them from traditional marketing research as to keep our studies as accurate as possible. So next, let's take a look at the profile of the marketing research industry. Let's start with the demographics and look at what the average profile might be. As you can see, the vast majority of researchers have less than 20 years of experience. 43% have 10 or fewer years of experience, and then the median is 12 years. And when it comes to education, in this year's sample, everyone held a college degree, and 58% have an advanced degree, either a traditional master's, an MBA, or a PhD.
And here's a look at the gender breakdown. These numbers have held fairly steady over the years. In this year's data, women came in at 55% of the group, and men make up 45%, still fairly close with a slight female skew. As we analyze the data each year, we go through and assign each professional to a category based on their current position, either supplier side or client side. The supplier side includes researchers at firms of all different sizes: GfK, Kantar, Nielsen, Holland Partners. They range from boutique businesses with just a handful of people to mid-sized firms all the way up to large organizations with a global footprint. Regardless of company size, though, these are the teams commissioned to help lead research projects on behalf of other organizations. On the client side of things, researchers sit in-house at companies like Pepsi, Yum Brands, Nike, or Netflix. These insights professionals work within a broader organization on a dedicated research or insights team. They can vary from a lean group of 1 to 5 researchers, or some large teams might have 50 or even 100 people. Some teams are super hands-on and run all their own studies internally, while others tend to partner primarily with supplier-side groups for their research needs. So once we separate the data by supplier-side and client-side researchers, we then break down each section into several sublevels. For the supplier side, we split researchers into levels primarily based on years of experience. In previous years, we've had 3 levels on the supplier side, but we're excited to introduce our 4th level this year, which breaks out the senior end and leadership positions within these organizations. Titles can be all over the board and are never really apples to apples on the supplier side, so we use years of experience to really guide our categorizations here. So we've included some examples of potential titles just to give you a reference of each of those. On the client side of things, we use 5 levels based on both job title and experience. Titles on the client side do tend to be more consistent across companies, so these influence our levels more heavily than years of experience. You'll see us refer to these levels throughout the discussion today, so I wanted to review the segments before we dig in.
Okay, this is Karla again. So now we're going to get into what you're all most interested in, which is salary information. To start, here's a chart showing the median base salaries at all of the job levels we analyze. You'll see the client-side salaries in the light blue bars and the supplier-side salaries shown in the darker blue. In the light blue at the top, level 1 client-side professionals, which typically equates to analysts or senior analysts, earn a base of just over $83,500. Those at level 3, who are about at the senior manager level, earn a median of $146,000, and at level 5, the executive level, the median base salary is just over $215,000. Now, taking a look at the bottom of the chart in dark blue, early career marketing researchers on the supplier side earn a median salary of $67,500 per year, and move up to $90,000 for those with approximately 5 to 9 years of experience. And this year, as Kit alluded to earlier, we've added a category S4, which encompasses the most senior supplier side candidates, and they earn a median salary of $180,000. Next, we wanted to take a look at how salaries vary year over year. First, on the supplier side. Compared to our 2018 report last year, levels 1 and 2 on the supplier side increased by single digits. With our new category this year, you can now see the breakdown of the most senior level roles and leadership positions on the supplier side. Level 3, which is about 10 to 20 years of experience, didn't necessarily go down, but we now have more granular information. So we're looking forward to being able to draw comparisons for these 2 categories next year. And since we've been releasing this study for several years now, we're also able to look back at data over the past 7 years. This year, salaries rose 4% at level 1 and 7% for level 2, which are on par with what we've seen over the last couple of years. Again, as we mentioned on the slide previous, we'll start to track changes for level 4 in future studies. Next, let's look at how client-side salaries changed since last year. For client-side researchers, we saw increases at all levels, with level 4 remaining relatively steady. Those at level 5 saw an increase of 9%, while level 1 saw an increase of 7% compared to 2018. And here we see the 7-year trend on the client side. This is the second time since we started our studies that we saw increases in all levels across the board, albeit a very small increase for level 4, but just seeing those last 2 columns in all green is pretty darn encouraging. And before we move on, we wanted to pause and recap some of the highlights from our study and sample. We saw base salaries increase at most job levels, with the largest increases at level 5 on the client side. The increases vary from 1 to 9%. And you can read more about this in our full report, but it's no surprise salaries vary by industry. The highest salaries are seen in the CPG industry, so salaries for researchers in the healthcare, pharma, and tech fields are starting to catch up. Again, no surprise here, but this is an educated group. Everyone has a college degree, and a majority have an advanced degree. It's a relatively young market. 43% of the sample has 10 years of experience or less, and over half of the sample is female.
Thanks for walking us through this year's salary study findings, Karla. Of course, there's even more info in our full report, so we'll show you how to download that before we go today. Over the past year, in addition to collecting data for our salary study, Karla and I have also done our own research in a couple flash surveys, so we wanted to share some of the interesting findings we gathered. First, we wanted to take a look back over the previous year to get a sense for how many researchers changed jobs. For this exercise, we did not include those who made an internal move within the same organization, but we specifically looked at researchers who had transitioned to a new role within another company entirely. After analyzing the movement in 2018, we found that nearly 21% of researchers had switched jobs, so just over 1 in 5. We then wanted to take a look at how long researchers tend to stay in their roles. We found that the average tenure for someone in the field is just over 3 years, 3.1 to be exact. People often ask us how to know when it's time to make a move, and really there's no universal number here. Instead, we generally say it may be time to pursue something new if you're starting to feel a little stagnant in your current role, or if you are no longer challenged or picking up new skills. We encourage researchers to make deliberate and strategic moves throughout their careers. So try not to make a jump for money alone or move just because you hit an arbitrary 2 or 3 year mark. It's really always better to consider how a new role might add to your resume or help bolster your experience. So that was a look at movement in the field among researchers. Now what about hiring within the industry? To explore hiring plans among research teams, we did a quick flash survey in early 2019 to gauge companies' hiring plans for the year. We heard back from hiring managers and HR teams across the U.S., and here's a quick look at the results. On the left side here, in the various shades of blue, we have the teams with plans to hire in the first half of 2019. And on the right, in the shades of green, those represent the teams that didn't have plans to hire. The dark green on the very far right had plans to cut back. So focusing on the portions in the blue, the teams that were hiring, we found that 67% of supplier-side firms plan to have an active search in Q1 or Q2 of this year, either expanding their teams, backfilling open roles, or a combination of the two. And 43% of client-side organizations plan to hire in their first half of the year. Now check out the numbers at the bottom. So backfills aside, these were the teams expanding, adding brand new researchers to the team. 63% of suppliers and 25% of client-side teams had plans to grow. And Karla and I, we've also noticed an uptick in supplier-side openings over the year and new roles coming in. So So we can attest that many firms have, in fact, been building in 2019.
Thanks, Kit. So now that we've flooded you with data, we wanted to switch gears for a bit and talk about overall trends that we're seeing in the market. As Kit mentioned earlier, we have a pretty unique perspective in our roles here. We really like to keep tabs on shifts and changes in the industry. This really allows us to best service both our clients as well as the professionals that we work with. So we wanted to talk about a few of the things that we've been seeing in the marketplace. Our first trend is an encouraging one. For a few years, research salaries held pretty steady, though last year's report saw a noticeable increase year over year for almost all job levels. We were very encouraged to see that this trend continues upward for this year. Our 2019 data confirms salaries are still on the rise for many, especially on the client side. We've talked about this before, but even with increasing salaries, we really always advise insights professionals to examine an opportunity holistically beyond just salary when considering a new role. It really is important to think about both short and long-term growth opportunities. Making well-thought-out transitions throughout your career is more likely to be beneficial than moving around just to follow the money. And we've talked to countless professionals over the years who tell us that they regret taking a role just because it paid a lot. On the employer side, so for any hiring managers or HR professionals on the line, if you haven't changed your salary bands in the last few years, this might be a good time to re-examine your different bands and compensation packages. You want to try to be as competitive as you can so you're able to attract top talent in this active market. Okay, next, as you might expect, the early career market is generally more active. Junior professionals change jobs more often than those with more experience. Our job change research from earlier in the year found that 27% of professionals with 10 or less years of experience took a new job in 2018, compared to just under 18% of researchers with 11 or more years of experience. In our 2017 report, we called out a trend that we'd started to notice, and that was some client-side teams were starting to operate in a leaner capacity than in years past, and this is something that we've seen continue. Some in-house insights teams continue to get smaller, and we've noticed increased competition among researchers for many of these client-side roles. On a few intake calls with new Fortune 100, new Fortune 500 clients over the past year, Kit and I have really been surprised to learn just how small their insights teams were. Frankly, you'd assume that some of these brands and teams would have groups of 10 or 12, maybe even more, when in reality, we were helping them staff their fourth or even fifth team member. Something else that we've seen more and more is companies starting to leverage screening tools and assessments during the interview process. And it makes sense. With smaller teams, each person's impact is more strongly felt than if on a larger team. So companies want to take the time on the front end to thoroughly vet potential team members to ensure their skill sets are really where they need the team needs them to be. And we touched upon this earlier, but in our past reports, data has shown consumer packaged goods as the highest paid industry for quite a while. In recent years, though, we've noticed the gap closing as salaries for researchers in the healthcare, pharma, and technology fields are starting to catch up to CPG.
So what's next for the research industry? It's been interesting. With the increased attention on growing fields such as data science and analytics, many are wondering what all of these changes will mean for marketing research and insights practices. Karla and I have been getting this question more and more over the past year or two. And it's true, the industry has seen many shifts over the years, and marketing research as we know it today will absolutely continue to evolve. But it's unlikely that analytics and data science will replace research and insights. Instead, we think teams will continue to collaborate and work even more closely together. The unique skills that professionals in all of these fields bring to the table really do complement each other. For instance, analyzing massive amounts of behavioral data can become even richer when coupled with insights gleaned from custom research or qualitative exploratory to help tell a more comprehensive story. And there are many research approaches that offer unique advantages and help capture that voice of the consumer and the whys behind specific behaviors. So when used in conjunction with analytics and data science, the synergy can bring a wealth of information and build 360-degree insights to help drive strategy across an organization. We really do anticipate a continued need for all of the areas, including research and insights. And to close us out today, We talked about how active the market is. Are you wondering how to ensure your background is competitive in today's climate? One piece of advice we want to leave you with: we always recommend that as a researcher, you ensure you're picking up new experiences over the years and that your research skill set is well diversified. And that advice is even more important in today's atmosphere. While specializing in one particular area can certainly open up some doors, you want to be cautious not to get so focused and narrow in your expertise that you potentially limit access to future opportunities. For example, if you've worked exclusively on advertising or copy testing research, it can be tough to get into a broader role that might require proven experience with, say, brand strategy work, segmentation, or innovation techniques. We continue to see employers seeking out research professionals who can bring experience with a wide range of tools and methodologies. So gaining exposure to a variety of work early on and then continuing to expand upon your research toolkit throughout your career can help you stay marketable as new technologies continue to emerge. Adapting that lifelong learner mentality can really help keep your skills sharp and will likely increase your potential job opportunities down the line. So there you have it. Never stop learning.
I like the lifelong learner reference. I think that's smart. So I know that Kit and I have covered a lot of information today. So if you're interested in taking a closer look or want even more, be sure to check out our full report. It just went up on our website this morning, and it will give you demographic details, compensation breakouts, year-over-year trends, and other insights. You can download it for free at our website, burtchworks.com/study. Okay, Mary, back to you.
All right, thank you, Kit and Karla. We are going to get to our Q&A in just a minute. So if you have a question for Kit and Karla, please be sure to send it on using the chat feature on the left side of your screen. For those of you who aren't familiar with Burtch Works, we are an executive recruiting firm specializing in quantitative fields like marketing research, data science, and analytics. We're the leading resource for insights about the hiring market and produce comprehensive salary reports every year for our main specialty areas. Our data and insights have been repeatedly mentioned in the press, and this year Burtch Works was once again recognized by Forbes as one of America's best recruiting firms. Of course, if you're looking to add to your market research or consumer insight staff, we would be happy to speak with you and do some brainstorming about what you might have planned in terms of hiring before the end of the year or to start off the new year. We offer contingency and retained services from research analysts all the way up to chief research officer. Feel free to send us an email if you'd like to chat, info@burtchworks.com. And if you're looking to post your research or insights opportunity or to browse for new opportunities for yourself, you can check out our niche job board, which is trafficked by thousands of professionals in marketing research, consumer insights, category management, and much more. Aside from searches we're engaged on, our job board is open to all of our clients. So if you're just looking for a targeted place to post your job listings, definitely get in touch with us. And we offer several options depending on how many roles you'd like to post. Throughout the year, be sure to check out burtchworks.com/blog, where our recruiters post hiring market insights and other information specifically related to marketing research and consumer insights, including our resume guide, how to evaluate opportunities, and tips for writing job descriptions. You can also follow Burtch Works across our social media channels to stay up to date on our latest research. Our YouTube channel, found at youtube.com/burtchworks, you can find recordings of other presentations, including analysis of our Research and Insights Trends Survey and career planning resources just for researchers, as well as our series with executive leadership coach Penn Resmeyer, with topics including making successful career transitions and how you can take charge of your own onboarding in a new role. And now it's the time everyone's been looking forward to, the Q&A. So let's jump in, and feel free to continue sending your questions in for Kit and Karla, and we'll get to as many as we can. All right, Kit and Karla, to start things off, do you have any advice for managing an active job search? For example, keeping track of applications, where you've applied, et cetera.
Yeah, that's a really good question, and especially if you've been looking for a job, for a couple months. I feel like the longer your search is, sometimes the harder it can be to keep track of everything. So there's a few different pieces of advice that we give to people who are actively looking. One thing could be just an Excel sheet, especially when you're applying. Some are on LinkedIn, some might be with a corporation directly. Applications can take a lot of different forms. So keeping an Excel document that just notes the company, the position, maybe include a link if there is one, date to when you applied and also how you applied. So was it through another recruiter? Was it through the company directly? That can just help make sure that you're keeping pace and you kind of know what your coverage is. And then, of course, when you're working with a recruiter, a lot of times if you've already applied somewhere, we aren't able to represent you. So having that conversation up front, we can be transparent about where you've been, what you've done, and kind of get the process going as possible.
Yeah, and this is Karla jumping in. And we're happy to hear that you're thinking about this, and we like when people sort of take a organized, methodical approach because, we talk to people and searching for a new job is almost like another full-time job. Maybe we'll call it a part-time job if you're serious about it. So just to, expand on what Kit was saying, some of these things sound basic, but we've seen things go wrong. So, do make sure that your resume is attached to all applications. It's just going to help streamline the process. Double check before you hit submit. And Kit and I have noticed over the years, too, that the resumes for some reason tend to fall off LinkedIn's quick apply option. So, just be cognizant of that. Again, sounds obvious, but we have so many stories where people's email, phone number wasn't up to date. So make sure that you've got your correct email on there, your personal, most up-to-date email, your cell phone number. And then, similarly, make sure that your LinkedIn is updated. Make sure your city, current company, current title, all of that is correct and that it matches your resume. That's just going to help streamline the job search, in addition to what Kit was saying about keeping a pretty detailed log. Again, Excel is a great place to do this. Just detailed log of where you've applied, how your application got there, maybe if it was a referral from a friend of a friend or something like that, just so you kind of have your ducks in a row because we know it can be overwhelming.
All right, thank you both for that advice. Our next question comes from talking about leaner client-side teams. Do you see that these leaner teams are expected to, each person is expected to do more, or are these because they are partnering more with supplier-side researchers on a project or ad hoc basis?
That's a really good question. And it is going to vary kind of team by team, client by client, how they approach things. But I think, to answer the question, I think it's a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B. We are seeing, though, that just across the board with client-side organizations, they're having the researchers do more and be a little bit more hands-on. So where they can, they'd like the researchers to step in, write questionnaires, program in Qualtrics, things like that, do what they can to avoid outsourcing for smaller, quicker turnaround projects, just to keep those things in-house. Though for some projects, you're still going to need to outsource, and there's definitely still going to be the need for working with vendors, and there's specialized vendors that are really fantastic out there that a lot of our client-side organizations are continuing to partner with. But by and large, I'd say that the expectation is a little bit higher. We're starting to see a move away from client-side teams that exclusively outsource. So that's why Kit and I, we sound like a broken record, but we continue to say keep your skill set fresh, try to remain hands-on. Again, if you're at that point in your career where your skills are fresh, where you know the latest techniques, where you understand, the need for maybe rolling up your sleeves and putting together a questionnaire or something like that.
All right, thank you. Our next question is asking for a bit of resume advice. I hated my last job and left after 6 months. Do I have to put it on my resume?
That's a good question, too. And we always say if you ask 10 people, you'll probably get 10 different answers when you ask about resume advice. Our stance is always about transparency. So even if you're only there 6 months, 9 months, we would generally recommend putting it on there you can always kind of walk through the scenario or the situation as you're interviewing. But having that on your LinkedIn and on your resume can help explain any potential gap, which it looked like a lapse if you didn't have it on there. And also that a lot of times just raises more questions. So having a 6 to 9 month gap would likely raise even more questions than having a role that was a shorter stint.
And really, when you're taking a new job, you're entering into this new relationship. And I feel like we always draw parallels with dating and relationships and things. But again, to Kit's point, if you're honest up front, that's just usually the better path to take. You just hate for it to look like you're hiding something from a future employer, and for it to be a little bit awkward and come out down the line. And again, there's always going to be exceptions here. If you've only been at a job for a few weeks and had to leave for whatever circumstances, I think many would argue that would probably be fine to leave off, and you just haven't accomplished that much in a few weeks anyways for it to potentially kind of warrant space on your resume.
All right, thank you. And don't forget, for anyone listening, Kit and Karla did write a blog that is, we're calling it our comprehensive marketing research resume tips blog. So take a look at our website, www.burtchworks.com/blog for that. Our next question, where do you see custom insights and market research functions sitting within most companies, specifically on the client side?
Yeah, that's kind of interesting, and another one that varies a ton just based on the organization. Sometimes they can kind of funnel up through marketing. Sometimes there might be a completely separate customer or consumer intelligence group that might couple customer insights, consumer insights. Maybe there's a shopper team. Maybe it has the intelligence, competitive intelligence, or analytics team as part of that. So it really depends. Sometimes there's a strategy group where insights will funnel into. It really depends quite a bit based on the organization, and those are always good questions to ask when you're interviewing. Just thinking about a potential new role, where the team fits, and where how they kind of report up into the structure. That can help give you some context to how insights may be seen or used or utilized within the organization.
All right, so just a couple more questions here. So are you seeing any new areas of interest pop up or excitement around certain categories in the market research industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think over the last few months, Kit and I have kind of looked at each other and been like, are you seeing this? I think I am. And CBD and cannabis actually continues to be growing in popularity, especially on the West Coast. I think even just earlier this week, or perhaps end of last week, we even heard about a CBD-focused team at a major research supplier. So I think the fact that they are dedicating resources to this probably speaks volumes. So that'll be really interesting to track. And I think other things, streaming and tech, continues to be big. A lot of consumers, particularly millennials, are continuing to cut the cord. So companies are really trying to better understand behaviors and attitudes about streaming media, gaming, TV, how that's going to change, and really tailor their products and services to cater to that. So that's going to be interesting to track too.
Yeah, and I think we've also seen just some general excitement around the nutrition space, maybe health food, health and wellness, fitness. Those are areas that people seem to have some excitement around. And then also some of the direct-to-consumer companies out there. So Chewy or FabFitFun, some of those are kind of new, interesting ways to interact with consumers out there.
And subscription packages too, just to add to that.
All right, thank you. I think we're going to have one final question here, talking more specifically about salary. From someone who feels like they've been a bit underpaid for a while and wants to take advantage of new salary history ban laws that ban asking about current compensation. What's the best way to go about that?
Okay. Yes. So this has been an interesting year, just as all of these laws have gone into effect. And if anyone on the line doesn't know what the posing the question is talking about, a lot of states have enacted laws where future employers are not able to ask your compensation history. So I think it works for a lot of people. And again, from Kit and my perspective, it may not be the popular answer, but again, transparency is just really helpful for us, whether you're working with a third-party recruiter like Burtch Works or a company directly. We always say try to have that salary expectations discussion sooner rather than later. You don't want to go through the process, get on an airplane, fly out there, have 6 hours of interviews, only at the end of the day to find out that your expectations do not line up with their internal salary bands. You might not want to lead with that, on the initial phone call, but try to have that discussion sooner rather than later. You just need to make sure that expectations are aligned. And oftentimes companies, they just have internal bands that they cannot go higher. There's internal equity to consider. So you just need to suss that out at the beginning.
Yeah, and just kind of thinking about that internal band piece. The one thing you just want to be cautious about is, it's great to kind of push for more money or that kind of thing. Sometimes your dream job is, say it's a manager, consumer insights manager level, it could have a cap at 110 or 115. And so if you go in saying you're looking for 150 and more, that'll be kind of a disconnect from the start. So I feel like you definitely need to be kind of aware of where the band might fall and where you might fit within that, and definitely make sure you don't overshoot or undershoot for that matter.
Yeah, and a popular, or something that works, we think, in this situation, if you don't want to, risk closing that door prematurely and, like Kit said, asking for 150, but you still want to see a healthy increase, you can always talk to the company or, again, recruiter about what your floor might be. Again, no one wants to lead with that, but it does help provide some perspective. If you're looking for 100, or if you're at 100, you don't want to take anything less than 120, you can say, I don't think it makes sense for me to make a move under 120. And be careful, too, not to draw a line in the sand, and just show that you can be a little bit flexible, because sometimes there are other levers that future employers can pull. Perhaps it's vacation or equity or a little bit of a sign-on bonus or something like that to try to make you whole for the first year. So.
All right, thank you for that. And just to clarify, because I saw somebody in our chat from Canada, these salary history bands are to limit employers from asking about current compensation and salary history, so that helps prevent any discrimination based on, if someone's underpaid, they won't necessarily continue to be underpaid if they change jobs. So these are becoming more and more common in the U.S. So that was all the time we have for questions, but thank you for everybody who submitted questions today, and thank you so much for joining us. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Enjoy the weather if it's still nice where you are, and don't forget that you can download the study for free at burtchworks.com/study. And if you want to connect further with us, email us at info@burtchworks.com. We'd love to hear from you.